So for my job, I have to recruit nurses in areas outside the state where I live. So I live in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, and for example, I've had to recruit nurses to work in schools in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Most of the cases, or in cases where I'm recruiting specifically for Atlanta City proper, um, I tell them where it's at, and they always ask, oftentimes they ask, like, where in Atlanta. And when they say where in Atlanta, they're not just talking about the Atlanta city proper, but metro Atlanta, so Atlanta and the surrounding suburbs. They say, they speak as if Atlanta and metro Atlanta are the same thing, which is very different from Philadelphia, where people will fight you that if you're not from the city proper, you're not in the city. Uh, so, um, and I think so. I looked at like the subject on Reddit for different cities, and you can certainly see a lot more people are being a lot more lax in some of the newer, like Midwest, Southern, or cities in the Sun Belt, like Atlanta, Houston, or LA. They're a lot more lax about who you consider as being from the city. So um, for example, even in LA, there's a city of Los Angeles and LA County, and a lot of times people say LA, they're talking about the whole county and not just the city. And in again in Atlanta, if you're in the suburbs of Metro Atlanta, people also say Atlanta. And I mean, there's clearly still people in these Reddits for the cities that still argue that if you're not in the city limits, you're not in the city. But people are a lot more lax about it. Whereas in Philadelphia, for example, like unless you grew up in the city, or you currently live in the city proper, then you can't say you're from Philadelphia. And there was a YouGov survey done, if you can search it on Google, where they asked people in cities in different regions of the U.S., like the Northeast, South, Midwest, and West. And every region except the Northeast, there were a higher percentage of people who say it's fine to say you're from the city, even though you're from the suburbs. Like most of them are like close to 50% of people will say that it's okay to say you're from the city when you're from the suburbs, whereas in Northeast, it was a much higher percentage of people. Like there were more people who say you can't say that versus you can. So it's flipped in the Northeast compared to everywhere else. And I think there's a few reasons for this. So for one, if you look at some of the like Sunbelt cities, or Midwestern cities, or some of the newer, less established major cities, where they had more recent growth, if you look at the city boundaries and the areas surrounding them, you don't see much of a difference in the street grid density. It's pretty similar, like toward the edges of a city and then outside the city. Whereas in Philadelphia, you can see a clear distinction about the street grid changing um, outside versus inside the city boundaries. I mean, there are like some of the older suburbs where it's still pretty consistent, but still you can see the difference in like the formation of the street grids, and then the further you go out from the city boundaries, like the street grids become more cul-de-sac, even though they're relatively dense, because the suburbs of Philadelphia are like pretty dense population wise. But like even in like the in Philadelphia, most of the homes are row homes, and once you go outside the city, you see a lot more single family detached homes, and so it's visibly clear when you're in and outside of Philadelphia. Whereas some of the like newer cities, it's kind of like hard to make that distinction. And then the other thing is in the Northeast, people are way more established in the cities. Like people in the city, even some people in the suburbs are just generation removed from having family who live in the city, so there's a lot more connection in that way to the city. Whereas like you can, like, say if you don't have that shared experience, you're not like me, you're not from the city. Whereas some of the cities out in the west, south, like Midwest and Sunbelt cities, they you got you have a lot more expats, people who aren't originally from those areas. I suppose would have a less of a connection to the city because they're not really from there. So I think that may be a reason why there's the difference. But I also, myself being in the Philadelphia suburbs, I do enjoy going into the city. There's a lot of cool things you can do in Philadelphia, a lot of good food. So I feel personally a connection to the city of Philadelphia. But I can see why people might feel a type of way about somebody from the suburbs saying they're from Philadelphia when they're living outside. But so I can see both sides because you still have like shared culture uh, with the city and the suburbs, but like I guess the experience still isn't the same. So I can see both sides.